Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome Dr. Professor B. Rajshekhar. He is the Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor of School of Management Studies at University of Hyderabad. He has a commendable track record in the field of higher education as an academic and academic administrator. He is associated with the School of Management Studies since its inception, and he is also coordinating a postgraduate diploma in business management offered by the Center for Distance Education and Virtual Learning. He was also associated with the Telangana State Public Service Commission as one of the members of the Committee for Formulation of Scheme and Syllabus. As the Dean of School of Management Studies, he has played a significant role in launching a unique MBA program in business analytics. He is appointed as one of the members of the expert committee constituted by UGC to draft learning outcome-based curriculum framework for management. He has obtained his bachelor's degree in civil engineering and 3 master's degree in business administration, psychology, and education. He was awarded 2 doctorate degrees in business management and psychology. Added to the above, he acquired 2 postgraduate diploma in personal management and industrial relation and computer science. He also underwent a faculty development program at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Sir has participated in LEAP Leadership for Academicians program of MHRD at Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and Nanyang Technology University, Singapore, and 1-week training program on becoming a top 100 university at Monash University, Melbourne, Australia. He has successfully coordinated the LEAP of MHRD at University of Hyderabad as Associate Coordinator. He has published several research papers in international national journals, books, and conference proceedings. He is a specialist in the area of service quality and has been doing extensive research in various issues of service quality. He is actively engaged in research as a consultant and principal investigator for DFID, FAO, UGC, and AICTE sponsored projects. He also published and edited books in the area of consumer protection, supply chain management, and quality management. His primary area of interest includes service quality, quantitative techniques, operation management, research methodology, and industrial and organizational psychology. We welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Can I start the session now, Tamarai?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can start the session, sir. Thank you very much,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Is my screen is visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. Fine. Yeah, welcome back again. I think this is one area I have been extensively working. Quality in higher education institutions, quality in HEIs. Currently, of course, I am Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad. So, before we proceed, let us understand what is quality. I think had it been face-to-face teaching, we would have really had wonderful discussion. I think I thought of asking you the question, what is quality, and each one of us would be trying to tell what is quality. Then what is quality in higher education? How quality influences higher education? What are the challenges in managing quality in higher education? Certain things we used to discuss, but since it's more like one-way communication, hardly we have any scope for two-way communication. I think straight away I would be moving from one slide to other kind of a slide. But here the whole idea is why quality is needed in higher education. For that matter, why quality is important and why quality is so important in higher education, and how quality in higher education is different from other kinds of quality, and how do we enhance quality in higher education, whether this quality can be measured. If it is possible to measure, how do we measure, and whether these metrics of quality measurement, they are sufficient enough, or we would like. That's where I made my whole talk on this thing, into two parts. One is one session today, and another session I'm going to look at day after tomorrow. So today we are going to discuss about all basics of quality, and the next class of mine, I'm going to discuss about the ranking framework. I think, the ranks are the one, I think, in the public perception, the ranking is something to do with quality. But again, I may have my own reservations about it, but in the absence of the best measure, we may have to be happy with the better measure. So I think, that I think we will discuss more that quality framework, that 1.5 hour session, I'm going to exclusively talk on various ranking frameworks and how it can happen. And tomorrow, if you are given a academic leadership role, how you are going to enhance the quality so that the ranking can enhance. Or even if you are an employee of the organization, if you are aware of quality conscious, if you are quality conscious, and if you are aware of the nuts and bolts of quality, I think you can also contribute at individual level to the organization. So when I say about quality, so there are several kinds of understanding, means, synonyms, whatever. So for somebody said, quality is a value. Quality is a value. Somebody says, quality is conformance to specifications. Somebody said quality is conformance to requirements. Somebody said quality is fitness for use. Quality is predictable degree of uniformity and dependability with a quality standard. Meeting and are exceeding customers' expectation. So these are the kinds of various kinds of definitions and meanings given by people. So imagine that our own example. So if you have a kid who is supposed to go to school, so what are the factors you consider in identifying the school? I think in which school you are supposed to admit your kid, for which I think that all of us would be doing a lot of homework, and based on that homework we are going to make a decision. What are the kinds of parameters we consider while choosing a school for our kid? Later, we would like to admit our son or daughter into higher education institution. Then what are the factors we are going to consider while admitting them into various kinds of academic institutions? So when I interact with several students on this kind of topics, so when I organize this kind of training programs, and when I ask the students that what factors have made you to join this particular higher education institution, surprisingly, most of the students say it is nearer to our house. That is number one. The number two, we don't want to stay in the hostel. That's where we wanted to continue. The third group says, sir, we don't want to be in our native place. That's where we moved from our to this college. That is the third response. The fourth response, they say that placements are good. But unfortunately, none of them spoke about we are here because of quality of education. This is very kind of a surprising. So when I keep on asking this question to 300 students of a institution, academic institution, they have been telling all these things, but they never spoke about we are here for quality education. So sometimes I wonder whether students are coming to the college for quality education or for something else, or whether parents also, when they are admitting, when I interact with the parents, especially in engineering colleges, when there is an orientation to parents of engineering students, when I try to interact with them, 90% of the faculty members keep on saying that there are better placements. So there are better placements. That's where we wanted to admit our kid in this college. That is the case. The students are choosing the academic institutions. Our parents are choosing the academic institutions, not because of quality of education, because again, there is a kind of a discussion whether this placement is leading, quality education leads to placement, whether for placement is quality education, that is another kind of a issue. Because when the recruiters are coming for recruitment, are they really testing the knowledge? Are they really testing the communication? whether these academic institutions are really giving the knowledge or they are training them to be a better communicators who can face a better interview. These are all kinds of issues. Having seen the higher education system for the past 3 decades, so I have my own issues and I have my own comments to make about higher education system, because I am also, I think some part of my CV she could not read because it's too long. I also run a career counseling column in a leading newspaper in both Telugu states. I have been doing it for the last 5-6 years, and I am a career counselor. I have been a career for the last 25 years. But last 5 years, I have been running the career counseling column. So the kind of questions what I get from the students, the kind of questions what I get from the parents, the kind of phone calls what I get from the parents, everybody is thinking this higher education is a ladder for employment. So with higher education, be employed. This is what I think most of the people are perceiving. But my question is, we have been speaking about quality, and most often, the President of India, Prime Minister of India, HRD Minister, of course, now Education Minister, keep on saying, sometimes some Chief Ministers also keep on saying that why there is no institution from India in the top 200 QS world rankings. Why there is no Nobel Prize in India, from India, Nobel Prize from India for the past so many years? Because whatever Nobel Prizes we have, they are not done work here. Most of them, either it is Venki Ramakrishnan, or even very recently, whoever got into economics. All these people, they got it for their work at abroad. But there is a kind of a question, why Indian universities are not producing Nobel laureates? Why Indian institutions are not figuring in global rankings, top global rankings? I think these are the kinds of challenges we have. But personally, I think most of the ranking institutions and most of the Nobel, even Nobel, not necessarily Nobel, for any award for that matter, they look at the quality of research and the impact of research and so on and so forth. So I'm not getting into the policy issues about funding and other things, but we are now trying to look at what is, how it influences quality, how it happens at the micro level, at macro level, I know the government of India or state governments will have a lot of kind of practices and expectations and also ideas. But when they're translated into an institution, how these things are taking shape. So now by looking at this particular slide, so you can say that, it is the dependability, it is value, it is conformance, it is fitness, it needs meeting the or exceeding the customer's expectations. But the biggest problem here is the customer's expectations are not same. The customer's expectations are not same. So they vary from customer to customer. But whether as a higher education institution, are we meeting the expectations of every client, every stakeholder? Because here the student is not only a stakeholder, there are several stakeholders. There are several stakeholders for higher education institution. So then are we meeting the expectations of every stakeholder? This is one important issue. The second kind of what I'm speaking about is service quality, because when I speak about quality, most of the definitions, whatever we have seen in the earlier slide, they are something to do with the product quality. Most of them are going to fit for product quality, but education is being a service and it is also coming under service sector. So then the service quality, I think, we need to understand, because we need to understand the education quality. So we need to understand the broad philosophy of service quality. So it is an activity or series of activities of more or less intangible nature. So the biggest challenge, because I have been doing very extensive research in the area of service quality. So the kind of a challenge I face in doing service quality is the service itself is intangible in nature. And when it is intangible in nature, then how do I measure the quality of service? So the difference between customers' expectations for service performance to service encounter and service perceived. So this is one kind of a definition, because it is like kind of a service sector. So what we are trying to look at is the expectations for service performance prior to the service encounter and their perceptions of the service perceived. So if you conduct a survey among your alumni, so these alumni, whoever joined your institution and has completed their education and left your university or institution, when you speak to them, so before joining our institution, what are your expectations? And after completion of your course, what are your experiences, the way the services, the perceptions about the service? So this is how the service, we try to see the gap between the PE, perception and expectation gap, the perception about the service, expectation about the service. So prior and after, before encountering the service versus after experiencing the service, whether these particular activities, whatever we undertake in the process of providing service, whether we are meeting their requirements or not. This is one important issue. Then a global judgment or attitude relating to the superiority of the service. So then most of the time what happens in service quality, the perception matters. The perception matters and expectation matters. So expectations also vary from respondent to respondent, stakeholder to stakeholder. But at least, most of the expectations can be same. I think everybody wanted to have their best. Everybody wanted to get the best. And very interesting thing in education system is a student who is entering the system with the 90%, a student who is entering with the system with 60%, and both of them are having the same expectations. And nothing wrong in having the similar kind of expectations, but one also should understand with my kind of a capacity, my kind of a caliber, I need not to have 100% the best. I think, I can also look at, my capacity and my capability in meeting those expectations of the institution. The way as a stakeholder, you have expectations. The institution also as a service provider will have some expectations from the stakeholders. But unfortunately, that kind of a freedom is very much little for the higher education institution. The reason is there are several higher education institutions that are struggling to fill their seats. So in one particular state, recently, after completion of their undergraduation first year admissions, 60% of the seats are vacant. 60% of the seats are vacant in various undergraduate colleges. Then when I was asking for some kind of a inputs, why it happened, then the official said that, even 100% of the students who have completed their +2, even if they join our institutions, there would be 30% vacancies. The reason is now they say, so they have given permission left and right to all the colleges. So the available seats are more than, the supply is more than the demand. When the supply is more than the demand, can you ensure quality? The institutions are running with 100 students, 50 students, 40 students, 20 students, 30 students. Then are you able to provide the same kind of a quality what you can provide when there are bigger numbers? This is another kind of a challenge. The next important kind of a challenge in providing quality in higher education institutions is there is always a kind of a strong correlation between quality and cost. So if you wanted to produce a better quality, the cost of producing that kind of a quality can be very high. But whether the stakeholders are willing to absorb such kind of a extra cost, this is another kind of a problem. The second kind of a situation is paying huge amount, whether that amount is being translated into a quality. Because I may pay some tuition fee of 2 lakhs or 2.5 lakhs or 3 lakhs, but am I receiving the similar kind of a quality? Because the amount for which I have been paying, whether the value of the money, whether I am getting service in return. But again, there are a lot of complaints that these so-called higher education institutions, they recruit more people, but they don't recruit more faculty. This is one challenge. Even they recruit more faculty, most of them are not up to the mark. This is the second kind of a challenge. Even they are up to the mark, but they are unable to provide them enough infrastructure for them to conduct teaching and such process. So as a consequence, what is happening? There are a lot of imbalances. That's what I'm trying to say. There are a lot of imbalances in the whole process of higher education system. But higher education itself, when we say about higher education, this higher education, it starts from undergraduation. That is after +2. But we have such a diverse kind of a higher education programs, state-wise and maybe district-wise and national-wise. And also we could see lot of duplication of institutions. Say, for example, if you take engineering, it starts from IITs, then NITs, then IIITs, then private engineering colleges, affiliated private engineering colleges, and private universities, then private universities. And among IIITs also, there are some state IIITs and central IIITs. So that means the same engineering education is provided from IITs to a local college. And unfortunately, you could see the huge variation in the quality of the students and the quality of the delivery. Quality of delivery of academics, and even the evaluation practices, the teaching practices, funding practices. If you look at them, there's a huge difference. But at the end of the day, all these people are going to contribute to the field of higher education. So then these are the kind of challenges we are going to face. Just now I have in my earlier talk, I have given you an example of, if you are a vice chancellor of a university, if you are a director of a college. For example, if you take an engineering college, I think I may probably feel that, there are good number of engineering faculty also attending this workshop. So if you are an engineering faculty, your salaries are different. If you are a mathematics or physics or chemistry or English faculty, your salaries are different. So then the principal, who can be a principal of an engineering college? Only engineering person can be a person who is from engineering discipline can become a principal of an engineering college, but others are not permitted. So there is a kind of a vertical kind of a division among the faculty that, one engineering group and non-engineering group. And engineering group also, again, there is a kind of a classifications of circuit and non-circuit. I think, electrical, electronics, computer science is one category, and civil, mechanical and things are another category. So what I'm trying to explain you here is we have a lot of diversity. That's what I'm trying to say. We have a lot of diversity, and there's a lot of huge variation in the expectations and huge variation in funding. So under these circumstances, how do we ensure quality? That is what is the other important issue. So because since we are discussing education is mostly a kind of a service, so there are some kind of attributes of service quality. So now you try to relate these attributes to higher education discipline, higher education field. So ability, responsiveness, competence, access, courtesy, communication, credibility, security, understanding, tangible. There are several kinds of attributes here, but imagine whether our higher education institutions are reliable. One, whether our higher education institutions are responsive, whether we are competence, whether we are accessible, whether we have courtesy, whether we have a communication, whether we have credibility, whether we have security, whether we have understanding, whether we have a kind of a tangible outcomes. So these are the kinds of questions one need to ask. See, most of the time, what I could see, whatever they is a huge advertisement versus whatever they deliver is always kind of a question mark. Whatever promises they are going to make on the orientation program of day one and what they are going to deliver is always a question mark. I'll go one step further because the program is on leadership. The vision and mission statements of those higher education institutions, if you really go and conduct an audit, whether the vision and mission of that organization being translated into action, most of the time, you get very disappointing responses because there is no connection between vision and mission. There is no connection between mission and the way you are operating the institution. So this is where the managements of these higher education institutions, they would like to cut down the cost. So when they would like to cut down the enhance quality, because to get the quality, I think, you need to make a huge investment. But unfortunately, the managements are keen in investing in visible and tangible assets, the infrastructure, but they are not investing in intellectual kind of a capital. This is another kind of a challenge. So how do we address this kind of a issue? So this is what I think, we could see most of these higher education institutions, they spend huge money on non-recurring kind of expenditure, infrastructure kind of budgets and plans. So they use it to spend, they have huge buildings, they have a huge library, so they have huge classrooms, but the quality of teachers is a big question mark. So without this quality of teaching, how can you provide quality education? So this is the kind of a challenge. And sometimes what happens, even if you wanted to recruit quality teachers, they are not available. So this is the challenge most of the institutions are saying. Sir, we have been advertising for this position for several get good candidates. So how do we? So we need to run the show. So that's where we know that we are making a compromised appointment. But how do we balance this? This is the kind of another challenge. So when we look at the unique features of education as a service sector, so this is one is highly complex system. It is not that simple. It's not like running a hotel, not like running a software company, not like running a banking services, because though it is service, there are several services, but each service has got some kind of a unique advantages. But when it comes to higher education system, it is highly complex in nature and multiple stakeholders. This is the biggest challenge. In any service sector, you may have one stakeholder, that is customer. But in this particular higher education system, there are several stakeholders, even who are going to make the decision for a student to admit to join an engineering college, join a particular program, a particular branch. So for me, more than the child, I think the parents are decision for the child, or sometimes the elder brother or elder sister are going to make the decision. But sometimes the students also make the decision. So then there are several kinds of people who are going to make the decisions. And we have regulatory system, they have the state government, it has got its own plan, and central government, it has got its own plan. I think all of us know that when this IOE status, Institute of Eminence status, is conferred for the two state universities, that is Jadavpur University and Anna University, because University of Hyderabad is also conferred the status of IOE, Institute of Eminence. There are 10 private institutions and 10 public institutions are given such kind of a status. Out of 10, there are 8 are centrally funded institutions like central government, central universities and IITs. But there are 2 state universities. One is Jadavpur University from West Bengal and one Anna University from Tamil Nadu. And the condition for centrally funded institutions, they will give all 1,000 crores in 5 years. But whereas in these state universities, they will pay 500 crores and 500 crores the concerned state governments have to give. But I think, it's almost 1 year, 1.5 years is over. But these 2 states are not very keen to fund that 500 crore to these 2 universities. So as a consequence, now these universities may not get IOE status. So I'm not getting into various kinds of discussions and debates. So my only concern is other 8 IOE institutions, they have been receiving the funds and they have been investing in buildings, they have been investing in various other kinds of research initiatives. And they have started their journey to become a world-class university over a period of 10 to 12 years, 10 to 15 years. But these universities, though they have a potential to grow as a world-class universities, but for the want of financial support from the state government, they may not be able to move further. So this is how I think, now when I say this is a stakeholder business, the state government is also a stakeholder, central government is also a stakeholder, regulatory agency is also a stakeholder, recruiter is also going to be a stakeholder, parent is a stakeholder, student is a stakeholder. So that is how I think, we have multiple stakeholders, and meeting the requirements of all these multiple stakeholders is the biggest challenge. And also this education is not like a one-time affair, it's a continuous long-term process. It's a continuous long-term process, and it's not going to happen like any other service sector. With one interaction, service is completed. 2 interaction, service is completed. I think we need several service transactions in higher education for that matter. So it's a continuous long-term process and necessity of customer participation. So this is very important. If you go to the hospital and just go to the hospital and the doctor surgery, and later you may have to follow the instructions. But whereas here, especially in higher education system, unless customer participates, the stakeholder participates, the client participates, I don't think, we may be able to enhance. I may bring, I think, replace all my existing faculty from my college, assuming that I'm running an engineering college, and I remove all my regular faculty and I bring some IIT Chennai faculty to that particular institution. I don't think, this institution is going to become a IIT. The reason is there are multiple factors made IIT as a special, not only faculty. Faculty, of course, they are important, but even you kind of a faculty and put them in your own institution, I don't think your institution is going to become IIT. So who matters? It's a question now. Who matters? Why this IIT Delhi, IIT Mumbai, IIT Chennai, Madras, they are doing so better? What made these institutions, I think, IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Bangalore, IIM Calcutta, for that matter, NIT Trichy. Among all NITs, NIT Trichy is the best NIT. Among management institutions, IIT Ahmedabad is the best. IITs, I think it's always a fight between IIT Delhi and IIT Mumbai. So this is how I think, IIT Bombay. So this is how it's going to, I think, the kind of a competition takes place from one institute to other institution. Now one need to understand why these institutions have become great. That is where under this leadership program, so they have made it mandatory that, the best institutions in the country are only eligible to offer this leadership program. Like NIT Trichy now, of course, this is not LEAP program, but at least, it is another kind of leadership program, University of Hyderabad, IIT Kanpur. And also, we should also get visit one international institution which is best. That should be the criteria of us. That institution, wherever we are going, that should be the one of the top 100 QS world ranking institutions, so that, we can go there and see their best practices. So that is how, when I have gone, Nanyang Technology University, when we have cooperated, we have gone to Monash University. So these are the two universities, we have seen how these institutions have become world class. That is how I think, one need to understand and what are the challenges. And when you wanted to replicate the same kind of a model in our own respective universities, what are the challenges we are going to face? And intangibility, this is another kind of issue. Services are intangible. And lack of physical evidence, this is another kind of a problem. It's mostly experience, it's mostly perception. So there is no kind of a straight physical evidence as it happens in the kind of product sector. So this is the scale of market entities, and there are tangible dominant and intangible dominant. So there they have given some kind of a products here: salt, soft drinks, detergent, automobile, cosmetics, fast food outlets. Whereas intangible dominant, advertising agencies, airlines, investment management, consulting, and teaching. The teaching is the highest intangible dominant service sector. This is what I wanted to tell you. So I think if you look at this, the salt is highest tangible dominant, whereas the teaching is highest intangible dominant service sector. So that is where this itself is the biggest challenge in managing the quality. So the higher education, if you look at here, today's higher education, whatever we are now speaking about, so it is a complex system facilitating teaching, research, and extension, international cooperation, understanding. So this is the biggest challenge of Indian higher education system. Mandate of higher education system is not just teaching. Teaching, research, extension, and international cooperation and understanding. Our higher education is the backbone of the society. Of course, all of us will agree. And it is the quality of higher education that decides the quality of human resource in a country. This is a very interesting point. I think everybody should underline, everybody should remember. It is the quality of higher education that decides the quality of human resources in a country. So since all of us are into teaching field, so let us look at our own curriculums, our own examination papers, our own teaching methods, our own evaluation methods. So are we strictly following all the quality metrics at every level? But unfortunately, what happens, our quality is defined by a teacher, not by student. In our system, our quality is defined by the teacher. The teacher decides what kind of quality he or she would like to give. Accordingly, they try to decide how the quality should be, how the quality of higher education should be. So each one of us will have our own way of looking at quality. So, but ultimately you should remember, it is the quality of higher education that decides the quality of country. So there are two kinds of views of a service quality, because we need to understand, because now I am discussing this higher education from service quality perspective. So the European perspective states that service quality should include three dimensions like technical quality, functional quality, and corporate image. So technical quality, when I speak about quality, so one is the technical quality, second one is the functional quality, third one is a corporate image. But American perspective proposes that service evaluated on the functional quality dimensions prescribed by 5 components. They are tangibles, reliability, responsiveness, assurance, and empathy. This is called RATER. RATER. Reliability, assurance, tangible, empathy, responsiveness. I think this is what they say. But whereas the US European kind of a perspective is, I think, technical quality, functional quality, and corporate image. When we look at quality, we need to look at from these perspectives. So this is kind of IPO framework. I think it is very popular. I think people who are from mechanical engineering, production engineering, industrial engineering, and of course people who are from operations area of management also will understand. There's something called the IPO framework and inputs. So which is very simple. One is input, second one is process, third one is output. So I'm now trying to look at higher education as a system. The students who are getting in, that is input. Students who are leaving, that is output. And whatever happens when they are in our institution, this is called process. So this process, we are now teaching and learning processes. So we are now trying to have. So now what is the productivity in higher education? What is the productivity in higher education? What is that, we are now trying to say output by input. So if your productivity is 100%. So can I say that quality is assured? This is the biggest challenge, because one of the kind of parameters of quality is we also understand quality from productivity perspective. If the quality is improved, productivity can be improved, or productivity is improved, quality can be assured. Do we have such kind of a mechanism where we have a system where we can balance the output and process? But if you wanted to increase the output, quality to be compromised. If you wanted to increase the quality, output to be compromised. Or if you don't want to compromise on input and output and quality process, then you have to compromise on the input. You may not be able to take whoever comes to you. But the biggest problem is we wanted to fill the seats. So then we will admit anybody, whoever is available. But we wanted output, but unfortunately effective output. But unfortunately, we do not have a kind of a system which can balance a kind of a diversified group of students. That is where, as a leader of an academic institution, I think we need to build a kind of a sustainable system, which can give us a proper output, and we need to develop a robust system, robust processes, and we need to develop a kind of a quality system. This quality system is bound to produce better quality. So this is how I think we can understand the education from this IPO framework perspective. If you look at what is input, so here the management policy, student selection, teaching facilities, staff, equipment, funding. These are all input. The process is program curriculum, teaching and learning, assessment, community services, staff on the job training. Whereas output, if you look at stakeholder satisfaction, graduates, scientific papers, patents and intellectual property, financial benefit. I think these are all output. So when we look at higher education institution, it is not mere teaching. So it is also research. So then if you look at most of our evaluation parameters, like all things in our academic institutions, they give great importance for the research, but not much importance for teaching. So they almost the teaching component, because they may say that number of classes held, that's it. Supposed to hold and how many held, that's it. They will not get into your quality of teaching, because quality of teaching is very difficult. So what is that easy now for them to assess? They always assess this quality of publications, impact factor, citation, journal it is, and projects. How many projects? I'm not saying that, you should assess them. So what we are trying to look at is, we try to impress upon this kind of a mechanism. Teaching is also to be part of a whole, because if you look at the institutions, most of the students are coming to academic institutions for better teaching. But unfortunately, the teaching, I think, you are thinking that, whoever is a teacher in a given institution, they are teachers. They are best teachers. But unfortunately, there is a lot of variation among the teachers. I think that is one important thing we need to understand. When we are looking at output, the output we are trying to look at about research publications, patents, patents and research output, publications, and number of students who completed their program is fine. I'm not finding anything wrong in it. But somewhere also we should have a metrics to assess quality teaching. There are wonderful teachers and who inspire the students to become better teachers, better researchers, but they may not be better researchers. The students, the teachers are that teachers, researchers. And we also have an example, the wonderful teachers and Bhatnagar awardees and so on and so forth. But they have wonderful knowledge, they have wonderful publications, but they are poor teachers. They fail to motivate the students. Then how do I balance these two streams of the people? Nowadays, even there are some managements, they have started incentivizing the faculty for their achievements. But if you look at even those parameters, what they are considering, that is again for publications and projects and patents. But they are not giving any incentive for teaching. The teaching is the one field highly neglected in higher education system, because we think the teaching should happen automatically. So whoever is a teacher, I think, they will teach. So that is a kind of an assumption we make. But there are the best teachers, and we need to have a mechanism to encourage such best teachers. And at the end of the day, we want to see most of our teachers are best. Of course, they should be also doing the research, and there are some people who can be the best researchers, but at the same time, we need to have metrics to identify the best teaching practices. So this is European Foundation for Quality Management, that is EFQM. So this is how we know how it can be applicable. So if you look at this leadership, with one, processes, key performance results. So this is the result section, enablers and processes. The leadership is, people, policy, strategy, and partnerships and resources. Then processes and the people results, customer results, and the society results. The key performance results, and we are looking at enablers and results and innovation and learning. I think this is how this European Foundation for Quality Management. Here, the leadership is very important, and the key performance results, KPRs, and we have to look at processes. Then when I speak about leadership, the processing comes into picture, policy will come into picture, strategy will come into picture, partnerships and alliances, resources and people. When you look at the processes, the next results are, people result, customer result, society result, and the key performance results. So, but what are the difficulties in adopting EFQM model to higher education? What are the various kinds of challenges? Here, the higher education institution is not a firm and does not produce graduates. One kind of a limitation, because higher education institution is not producing graduates, but unfortunately, it is happening. But you are not supposed to see this is like, a factory and producing graduates. But today you see most of the higher education institutions, they have become factories. Not clear what the product is. This is the second important. This is the kind of an issue. And who is the client of higher education? This is another kind of a challenge. It is not a hierarchical organization like our industry. The excellence model can be used to analyze the management, but not to assess the quality. You can use it to analyze the management, not to assess the quality. The concept of quality is very complicated in higher education system. The control of the quality has different accountability. So these are the kinds of challenges where we may not be able to apply the EFQM model to higher education. Okay. The next important thing is, what are the goals of higher education? So here the greater access, equal access or equity. Then third one is quality excellence. I think, these three are the kind of very important goals of higher education. So when I speak about greater access, so here it is, we try to speak in terms of GER, gross enrollment ratio. So this GER in higher education is defined as a percentage of people in the age group of 18 to 23 enrolled in higher education system. So we are now trying to look at the access in terms of kind of GER. So if you look at India, it is around 28% today, 28 plus, around 28%. China, it is around 48 to 50%. Developed countries around 50%. The world average is 27%. We are just close to world average. And the target was by 2020, 30%. Maybe but for this pandemic, I think, we could not meet. I think, maybe at 28, 29, somewhere we are going to stop. And our target is 2035. We would like to have 50% gross enrollment ratio. If you look at India's GER statistics, I think the first state to top is Arunachal Pradesh in terms of GER, but there are 16 colleges who are participating in this. Then the second one is Chandigarh, that is also Union Territory and a limited kind of a place. And interestingly, the third one is Tamil Nadu, and with 49%, 49 to 50% GER, they are in the third position. So if you exclude Arunachal because it's a small state, very small state, and 16 institutions. Chandigarh also, it's a kind of Union Territory. The more or less tops the entire country in terms of GER. So now our new aim is by 2035, we should touch 50%. Even the National Education Policy is also trying to say that. So that is one, the greater access. So then the second one is equity in access. So what is equity in access? So I think, when you look at the people who are enrolling into higher education, whether the people who are enrolling into higher education, their proportion of reserved categories like SC, ST, OBC or marginalized communities, are socially disadvantaged groups or economically disadvantaged groups, whether they are also finding place to this system. This is also very, very important in higher education system. So that means not only having access, but we should also see equity. Otherwise, only forward caste students are getting educated and reserved category students are not getting into higher education. That is going to be much more dangerous situation. So we should also see that, if you look at our University of Hyderabad Institute of Eminence status, we also spoke about no meritorious student is denied education for the want of fee. I think, that was our IOE mandate, and we thought, with our IOE mandate, we would like to support all meritorious students also, though they're economically from disadvantageous group, or maybe socially also they are from disadvantaged group, but we don't want to lose such students. So this is how I think if you look at the ranking frameworks, I think in the next class I'm going to discuss. There's also good weightage for equity, diversity and equity. The third one is maintain quality and excellence. This is the third important objective. We need to maintain quality, we need to enhance quality. And very recently, the government of Andhra Pradesh, where I was part of the committee, what we have now planned is, that government has planned is to conduct a survey of students of Andhra Pradesh state who are in higher education system. So their perception about current higher education system and what are their aspirations, what do they want little more from, and how their employability chances are there. To improve their employability, to improve the quality of education, what are the kind of strategies we can formulate? That for which they're conducting a kind of a survey. So with that survey, they would like to come out with some meaningful kind of conclusions. So meaningful conclusions, and that from their findings, they would like to convert those outputs of the survey as inputs for the policy, so that they would like to make some kind of a policy. So if you look at the central universities, is 50, around 50, state universities are 404, 340, deemed to be universities are 126, standalone is 10,725, colleges are 39,931, institutions of national importance are 127. So we are now, earlier it was 12.3, now we have moved to 17.9, and 25.9 million students have enrolled, more than 45,000 degree and diploma institutions in the country. So here the way progressing in terms of GER, definitely it is quite impressive, and we are able to meet our targets. As we said, 30%, we are close to 30%. By 2035, we are going to be 50%, we may be close to 50%. But the only concern is, what is this quality of output? This is what is very, very important. So whether this particular output, whatever now we are speaking, this percentage of students who are coming out of the system, whether they possess quality of whatever is expected. This is what it is. So some key levers for enhancing the quality of India's higher education. Merit-based student financing. That's number one. That's what I was telling. One is internationalization of education. That is the biggest challenge. Even recently, I was there in one of the review meetings of a premier institution of the country, name it. So they said, they have international students, and there are about 5% of the students are from international, but all of them are from Nepal. So, but one should also look at, when you speak about internationalization, so we should also see that, the students are coming from various countries. So that is also very important. And enabling research environment, because this higher education, I think institutions are mostly research focused, apart from teaching. So enabling research environment. And of course, the most important thing is high quality faculty. High quality faculty. So I could see the downfall of quality of higher education in the country over a period of last 3-4 decades is inbreeding. The students who study there, I think, there are some institutions I know, 100% of their faculty are PhDs from that own university. They don't want to take people from other universities. They take only students from that university. That means whoever completed their PhD, they join as faculty in that university. So then from where you get quality is the one kind of a question. So technically speaking, all university recruitments are nationwide. But in how many of the state universities, how many of the faculty members are from other than the state in which the university is located? This is one important question we need to ask. As per UGC regulations, there should be a nationwide kind of advertisement and a recruitment process. And can you imagine in a public institution in Tamil Nadu or Telangana or Andhra Pradesh or Kerala? So do you a public state university? Certain universities are, of course, they are mandated to do so, and they are doing it. But if you look at the state universities, are they able to recruit the people from other, forget about other countries, can they recruit from other states? This is what I'm trying to say. Because then the quality is very important, and quality of faculty. Then the number of applications, what you receive for your admission process, also very important. So for example, you have 1,000 seats and you are getting 1,000 applicants. Then, it's not worth. But there are institutions where for 1,000 seats, 1 lakh people are competing. Then definitely, I think, you are going to get meritorious students. And improve technology for education delivery. So, but today, fortunately or unfortunately, due to COVID, I think, the kind of changes, what is supposed to come in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, I think all of it has come within 8 to 9 months. So in March, I think we have announced a lockdown. By September, October, I think, we are now almost 100% online. I think that is very important aspect. And when you are unable to do that, the COVID pandemic has helped us to get into that direction. Then employability is another important issue. Accreditation, NAAC and other accreditations, ranking. I think I'm going to speak about ranking exclusively in the next class, and that's where I'm not touching. Then employability. So these are the kinds of things I think we need to understand how this higher education quality can be. So this is where now what I did is whatever definition I have given earlier, I am trying to link to education, excellence in education, valuation in education, fitness of education outcome and experience for use, defect avoidance in the education process, meeting or exceeding the customer expectations of education, continuous improvement. I think the same kind of definitions or meanings of quality I have applied to education, and education quality is something but higher education quality is something but related to excellence in education, valuation in education, fitness of education outcome and experience, defect avoidance in the education process, meeting or exceeding customer expectations, continuous improvement. Okay. So what is the excellence is in the higher education? Achieving mission or vision. So this is very important. I think, if you go and randomly ask all the faculty members of various higher education institutions, so if you ask them to state what is the vision of their institution, definitely I can challenge you, not more than 50 or 40% should be able to say the vision and the mission of the organization. So when we are not even bothered to know about our vision and mission, how you are going to execute it. And most of the time, these education institutions have wonderful vision mission statements, but when it comes to implementation, I think they are very poor at implementing them. Then best practices and achieving or exceeding benchmarks and internal measures. I think it is a great difficulty meeting them. But what we would like to look at is achieving and exceeding the benchmarks, the community agreement, cost effective, the customer or stakeholder satisfaction, dissemination of good practice nationally and internationally. I think this is what I think in 2004 there's a research paper. What is excellence? What is quality of higher education? So higher education should be achieving the mission and vision. That is also quality. Second one is achieving or exceeding the benchmarks, your competitors and internal measures, and best practice, community agreement, cost effective, customer or stakeholder satisfaction, dissemination of good practice nationally and internationally. So then the learning outcomes, making optimal use of also very important, cutting down the cost, financial, human assets, match between desired and actual perception. What is the desired perception and what is the actual perception? Positive atmosphere in the staff environments, integration in teaching and research, of course, quality of teaching and learning, relative to starting point and achieving targets. So I think ultimately we need to achieve our targets. Okay. So then we can see now the next. The education institutions are supposed to be a not-for-profit organizations that they may not have, because if they are not-for-profit, they may not have enough resources, but if they do proper allocation of resources, will result in good customer service. The secured jobs, lack of supervision, target and work are also the major reasons for poor service quality, especially if you higher education system. The secured jobs, lack of supervision, targets and work advancement are also the major reasons for poor service quality. Sometimes, I can give you one simple example. Prior to 2010, I think, what was the assessment criteria for the faculty? And post 2010, the 2010 regulations, they have started quantifying the research outputs. Then you could see last 10 years what happened. So then people have published it left and right, and nothing is very significant because they want numbers. Everybody is busy in improving their API score, and ISSN, ISBN, and I don't know why they have given that option. People started publishing that. Then in between, they have brought CARE list of journals, Consortium of Academic Research and Ethics. So that is another kind of a process is going on, and always people complain that wherever I have published earlier, those journals names are not here, whether this CARE is prospective or retrospective, which is another kind of a challenge. And somebody says, I publish in a Scopus, but when I publish it with a Scopus, now it is not in Scopus. Then what is my future? Then most of the people are keep on attending the workshops, training programs, and seminars, conferences, and to improve their ultimately now teachers are working for APA score, not for mission and vision of the organization. So this is what I think, once you start quantifying something, the over quantification of a qualitative kind of an output. So that is one classic example how people have deviated from their main target. And of course, job security is also one factor, and lack of supervision. In a public institution, if somebody is not doing their job, what the head of the department can do, what vice chancellor can do, what registrar can do. These are the kind of challenges we have. And this is very extremely difficult. As I told you in the beginning itself, it's extremely difficult to manage our own academic colleagues. This is always a challenge. So it is not like a police department, revenue department, other departments, and it is an academic institution, and we respect the freedom, we respect the autonomy. Then how do we extract work from your own colleagues? That is always. So of course, the accreditation, the way it happens, UGC, ASCTE, NAC, and of course NB. There are several professional councils. This is another kind of a problem. All of them have been saying that we are monitoring quality in higher education. So it is from, if you, for example, look at National Council for Teacher Education, Indian Council for Agriculture Research, Medical Council of India, Council for Technical Education, and Dental Council, Pharmacy Council, Nursing Council, Bar Council, Central Council of Homeopathy, Central Council of Indian Medicine, then Council of Architecture, Distance Education Bureau, DEP, Rehabilitation Council, National Council for Rural Institutions, State Councils of Higher Education, SCHE. I think these many kind of councils are there to monitor the quality. Interestingly, there is no uniformity in terms of their institutions, the way they are managing their institutions. Their guidelines are different, and in spite of these many regulations, why quality is so bad? This is the biggest challenge we need to understand. Why, when we have so many regulatory agencies, that is where now Government of India is thinking of even scrapping the existing these many regulatory agencies, and they wanted to bring them and all of them under one folder. There will not be ASCTE, there will not be UGC, or they may be there, but they may be part of the higher body. That's what I think they are trying to think. But do you think by simply dropping some organizations, renaming some organizations, bringing them under different kind of umbrella is going to solve the problem? This is one question mark. Because whatever name you give, whatever you do, the culture is same, the attitude is same, the manipulation is same. Then how do I ensure quality? This is another kind of a challenge. I don't want to be very pessimistic, but at least among ourselves, I think we need to be open. For outside people, we will not say all these things. But all of us are teachers, and some of us are academic administrators, and all of us wanted to become academic administrators tomorrow, and some of you are definitely going to be the leaders of academic institutions. I think we need to understand what is inside. What is inside. So this is what I think we need to understand. So now, what I have exactly done, now I think that in the second part of this, my presentation, is with one of my scholars, by name Subramaniam. So we have, as part of his doctoral research work. So during those days, this Andhra Pradesh state was combined state, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, they were together. So we have conducted a survey of quality of service quality of higher education, for which we have developed a scale that is called High Ed Qual, and that is, I think, that particular work, whatever now I have, half of my citations are from this work on higher. So that's where I thought of presenting, but this is 2012-14 findings. So now we are now in 2020, but still these findings were highly relevant in 12 and 14. But even today, for every 3 days or 4 days, I get a kind of a alert from Google saying that somebody cited my work. So I feel very happy for that. But just I thought of sharing some of our research out. So what exactly we have done is if somebody wanted to replicate this kind of a study, they can also do that as part of their project. If they wanted to do some project or UGC project, they can also explore the possibilities of doing it. So here, we have 7 universities in the state of undivided Andhra Pradesh. Out of 43, Andhra Pradesh have been elected criteria of universities established before the year 1990, NAC accreditation, geographical representation, 7 universities from 3 regions. Telangana region, we have taken 3: University of Hyderabad, Usmania, JNTU Hyderabad. Andhra region, Andhra University, Nagarjuna University. Rayalaseema region, C. Venkateshwara University, Padmavati Mahila University. So here we have 1 women university, we have 1 technical university, we have 1 central university, we have 3 state universities which were old. Usmania, Nagarjuna is a kind of, a 30 years kind of 40-year-old university. So this is our kind of sample we have done. Total we distributed to 3,018 people, but valid sample is 2,565. So this is the study, the outcome is from 2,565. So here, we have identified some service quality dimensions from the research. Number 1 is teaching. Number 2, administrative services. Number 3, academic facilities. Number 4, infrastructure. Number 5, support services. Number 6, internationalization. Okay, internationalization. So that is where I think, from our study, based on the customer's perspective and the discussion with the various bureaucrats and administrators, makers, experienced administrators, retired professors, I think, we have done kind of a brainstorming and got inputs. And finally, I think, this is also a kind of a sequence in which we have listed. I think most of the students are looking at, the quality should be seen in teaching. Quality should be seen in teaching. So that is what I think, they have been speaking about. So quality teaching, administrative services, academic facilities, campus infrastructure, support services, and international. So we have done a long process of developing the scale. I think, after several iterations. So this scale is going to tell us what are the important factors of higher education quality. And today this paper, as I told you, is highly cited. And if somebody wanted to get into that, you can go to Google and look for this high ed qual. And we have, I think, 5 to 6 papers from that study. And you can look into that. So teachers responsive and accessible. So if you wanted to think, this is all mostly from the stakeholder perspective. Teachers should be responsive and accessible. Course content develops the students' knowledge. Teachers follow good teaching practices. I think, teachers follow curriculum strictly. Continuously evaluate the students. Department has sufficient academic staff. Collects feedback to provide better services. Admin staff provide error-free work. Admin staff provide delay. Admin staff are courteous and willing to help. Admin maintains accurate and retrieval of records. Admin staff accessible during office. Classrooms equipped with teaching aids. Computer science labs are well equipped. Library has adequate academic resources. University has sports and recreation facilities. University has adequate hostel facilities. University has safety and security measures. University has adequate amenities. University organizes cultural and extracurricular activities. University provides counseling services. University promotes international activities. University has teachers from abroad. I think, these are the major factors, and one limitation of the study is we have concentrated mostly on undergraduate and postgraduate students. We have not gone for research scholars. That is where in this whole scale, the research component is missing, but there is a strong understanding that good research leads to good teaching. So when I speak about good teaching, this is understood that good research is also there, but the PG students are not bothered about whether the research publications are their teachers. And for them, what is important for them is whether the teacher is delivering the content as per their expectations. This is what is very, very important. So what exactly the students are thinking is, so my teacher should be responsive. That is how they are perceiving quality. The higher education quality is perceived through these kind of items. And these are the kind of dimensions: teaching, administrative services, academic facilities, campus infrastructure, support services, and internationalization. But here, if you look at the course content, they are also speaking about the curriculum. I think one company, our curriculum is outdated, and people also started comparing their curriculum with inter layer. When I was a student, I never bothered to know what is the syllabus in other university. So just we got the seat, and the students also comparing the curriculum of other universities and what is missing here. That how the students are, not everybody, but for some students at least I can say. Then teachers follow good teaching practice. They are expecting teachers to follow good teaching practices, and they have to follow correctly, and continuous evaluation of students' performance. They don't want to have the performance to be at the end of the semester. They want the performance to be evaluated continuously, including the class participation. Then this is another kind of a concern is most of the departments today, most of the academic units are today running with guest faculty, part-time faculty, consultants, visiting faculty. So this is one major limitation of Indian higher education system, because the recruitment at various universities is not happening properly. Even the recruitment happens, the quality of people getting selected is always a kind of a question mark. Because I'm only saying that I'm not making any sweeping comment. We are only looking at the news items, what appears in the newspaper about various kinds of recruitments. First of all, there is no recruitment. When the recruitment is there, are we able to attract a good quality people? Then collects feedback to provide better services. This is another important issue. We collect the feedback, but unfortunately, the feedback we collect for the sake of accreditation purpose, not for the improvement. To fire somebody, I think we use feedback mechanism, but not for improving the feedback performance. Then administration staff, they expect they're supposed to do error-free work and service without delay, and willing to help, courteousness, and willing to help. And whenever I want a document, they should be able to retrieve the record. Then they're accessible during office hours, office staff, and the classrooms equipped with the teaching aids. This is another important issue. There is no LCD, there is no computer, both of them are no power, all of them are there. There is no plug point, there is no switchboard. All these challenges, I think, one need to understand. And the computer science labs are well equipped. I don't know, this is a big question mark. A library has adequate academic resources. This is also a big question mark. University has sports and recreation up to some extent fine. University has adequate hostel facilities. This is a question mark. It is safety and security measures, adequate amenities, curricular and cultural and extracurricular. And there are also students are expecting counseling services. It could be personal counseling, psychological counseling, career counseling, emotional counseling, whatever. And international activities and the teachers from abroad. So major issues in student perceived service quality. I'm now looking from this perceived service quality student perspective. So the strictly following academic schedules. This is one issue they were saying. So conducting examinations and announcing results on time. Proper system to monitor the academic activity, syllabus completion, evaluation, and research. This is what I think most of the students are complaining. Then maintenance of campus infrastructure, especially hostels, including toilets, kitchens. So these are the major concerns of the students. I think, when we ask them, they're saying that the academic schedules are not strictly followed, classes are not completed, syllabus is not completed, question papers are not properly designed, evaluation is not properly. The provision of quality food, this is another kind of a problem. It's a common problem in most of the Indian universities, hostels and college hostels. Improvement of administrative services, mainly employee response and delay and inaccuracy in work. So this is another complaint that the responses and the courtesy given by the staff. The regulation of political activities on campus and their influence on students. So this is another kind of a problem that people have a lot of political affiliations, and sometimes in some universities this political environment atmosphere is spoiling the academic environment. And the cultural and local influences weigh down university education. They not only impede its growth, but also prevent sufficient exposure to meet international standards. I think, too much of localization, local students, local faculty, local issues in the local culture, that is not allowing for, I think, diversity. The regulatory bodies have to monitor the qualitative issues more intensely rather than focusing on quantitative standards. So this is the biggest problem. So all regulatory agencies are bothered about highly concentrating on quantitative, but they are not worrying about qualitative. So they need to concentrate more on qualitative, and we need to, based on this kind of inputs, whatever now we have done, it's more of introspection, and we are trying to understand, what is the current status of Indian higher education system, challenges of Indian higher education system, the perceptions of the students and stakeholders about Indian higher education system, and what are our challenges, what are our goals, what are our objectives, and it's also supported by a kind of a survey with 2,500 plus student survey and what they are perceiving. I think most of these things, I think, the study was concluded in the year 2014. In 2020 also, these concerns are remaining. These are the same concerns we are now still. If I conduct the study again, I don't think, I would be getting a better results than this. That means, our targets are improving and our syllabus and other things also, we wanted to teach them more. But unfortunately, we are not addressing some of the critical issues. I think, these are the areas, I think, we need to be careful and we need to be understanding, and we try to take the things forward. And definitely, Indian higher education system, always we have been saying that we had a great legacy in Indian education system across the globe. I think, we had Nalanda kind of, Takshashila kind of institutions, and we hope by maintaining proper quality, we may get back to our earlier legacy. And I think with this, I will stop here, and I will. Yes, am I audible? Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So with this, I will stop here, and I will see you in the next session. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. This is Jagan, one of the coordinator of this workshop. Participants
Yeah,
have
please.
sent questions. Can you please address, sir?
Participants are putting the questions.
In chat box, there will be, you'll be getting the questions from host. Ms. Harisri, one of the coordinator, is taking care of as a host for this session. He will send the question through chat box to you, sir.
Yeah, I think, I am now seeing the chat box. Can post it here. One question that our higher education system do not have any motivation among young recruiter. How much you find them
Sir, one second,
competent?
sir.
Yes, please.
We are using mobile phone, sir. In the mobile phone, there is no chat box, sir.
I am not using mobile phone. I am using my laptop. I'm using laptop only.
No, sir. We are viewing this in through mobile phone. So here there is no chat box.
For you, it is not visible. I'm not getting what you are saying.
Hello, sir. You
Yes,
can
please.
use the chat box now. For the participants,
So
you
those
can
who are
use the
using
chat box
laptop or
now.
computers only can able to get the chat box.
No, for mobile devices also can use the chat box now. I have enabled
People
the
who
chat
are
box.
using the mobile phone can't able to
Now
give
it is
the link,
enabled,
sir.
sir. Now
Yeah, it is enabled now, sir. You can use that.
So one question is, whether these problems can be addressed through NEP. So yes, the NEP document is wonderful, and they have a lot, and they have wanted to revamp the education system. But only thing is how the execution is going to be. That is what is the biggest challenge. So earlier also we had wonderful policies, but in execution we had our own challenges. As I told you, education is under concurrent list. Then there is the interference of central government and state government. In between, we have autonomy for academic institutions. But under all this, how we are going to make this NEP is a kind of a successful plan. That is very important. That maybe we hope we should be optimistic, and we is going to resolve some of our concerns.
Sir, I have one. Hello.
Please, madam. Please.
It was nice session, sir. I'm Dr. Kirti Dharwadkar, Director, calling from Pune Management Institute. I have posted the same question. I have one very biggest issue when I see the quality. Over the period, people become little obsolete in their sense. As you said that in recruitment, you can see that the people are, you're not getting right person at right job. But many times it happens that they have that motivation at the initial stage. Once they spend certain amount of time in their institutions, we feel that they lost that zeal to continue with the same zeal or continue with the same passion. So how could one or any HIE can keep this particular aspect live for a longer period? See, motivation is one part. Being a HR faculty, I can understand that. But don't you find that there should be certain parameters given in the policy itself which stick that person to be enhance their quality after every certain period of time, irrespective whether someone asks for it or whether someone is required for it, for your own benefit as well as for your organizational benefit? Do you feel that NEP is going to take care of this in coming future? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So very interesting question, but it is all depends on the leadership of HEI. If you are a vice chancellor, how you are going to engage the employee engagement, since you are from HR and I am also from management.
Yeah.
So the employee engagement strategies, how you are going to engage your employees, that is very, very important. So, and also we need to create a purpose. So the quality also, I think if you look at, create a purpose, then only people start doing it. Number two. Number three, incentivizing the faculty for doing better work. This is the kind of, third thing. I think, we need to have some kind of a incentivizing the system, recognizing the meritorious contributions of the faculty and continuously engaging them and interacting with them and trying to tell them that we can move further. I think now this QS World Ranking, NIRF ranking, year to year, each one of us would be trying to improve our ranking. That is what I think, we need to educate and we need to motivate. So I don't think, NEP can come into picture. I think, one kind of a suggestion people are thinking is because of job security, people are becoming little relaxed and lazy. But promotions, today, whatever promotion policies we have, if the promotion policies as per UGC regulations strictly implement, sometimes you can also go, look at our UGC regulation, the regulations are minimum regulations, they are not maximum. So if they say that, 3 publications in care list, I think you should be able to say 3 Scopus publications or maybe something more, 5 publications, something like that, if you are able to convince your own colleagues, then I think this is a collective responsibility. There will be a lot of resistance for change. People would not be willing to be accepting such kind of radical changes, but change will not come overnight. I think, NEP is a kind of giving us a lot of flexibility in academics, flexibility in curriculum, flexibility in governance. If you strictly implement that NEP with a true spirit, I think some of these problems can be addressed.
Okay. So can you, it was nice session. I just have one small thing. Can you give certain indicators or the suggestions for HEI leaders, how we can keep in mind certain points when you are leading any organization?
I think the next class when I'm speaking about ranking, there I am trying to discuss those things. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
We discuss about the ranking frame. There we will discuss all these inputs. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, sir. There is another question in the chat box from Dr. Renu Yadav. It is how accountability and transparency is correlated to quality. Please give specific indicators.
No, accountability, the transparency and quality, all of them are intangible. But definitely there is a correlation. I can say that, but we may not be mathematically prove it, but there is definitely a positive correlation. The system, I think, we need to improve the credibility. For example, you are taking a recruitment process. Most of the time, our recruitment process is highly confidential. We are not going to discuss anything. But if you are more transparent, then obviously, I think, the perception, the perceived quality about your institution will be improved. The student performance, for example, you conduct the test. And also, if you have some time to call the student and ask the student to go through the questions, and if you have a discussion and try to explain them how you have done this, that is going to enhance the credibility about the teacher and the credibility about the institution. But maybe due to lack of time, due to lack of resources, sometimes overburdened with so many activities, we may not be able to spend time. And though our intentions are not to be transparent and not to be accountable, but it appears that you are not transparent and you are not accountable. I think we need to also little careful about up to what extent we can be more and more concerned with kind of a transparency. The transparency is very well important. But at the same time, we need to also have a kind of a line up to what extent one can be transparent. Whether 100% transparency is possible in governance is a question mark. That is at the next level. Or sometimes, we have Right to Information Act, RTI. Instead of somebody asking RTI, if you keep everything in the net, whatever is the possible kind of things people can ask, then there is no work for RTI department. Otherwise, if you look at any university, any public institution, there are a couple of people continuously working for RTI. So that I think you can avoid. So when your intentions are very clear, you are very objective, there is nothing to hide. It's very simple. Yes, there is very policy issues and very confidential, but otherwise, most of the things. For example, when you are going to recruit the faculty, to tell in advance that how you are going to allocate to people. For example, you have screened the applications while shortlisting. To display the list of the people who are shortlisted, who are not shortlisted, reasons for not shortlisting. And once the interview is over, so you can send the appointment order to the selected people. People who are not selected, I think you can also communicate them a regret letter and wishing them all the best and probably give them some kind of a feedback. I think this is how one can think how we can change the way we are going to function. But it requires a lot of time, lot of energy. But once you go and occupy the chair, our priorities keep on changing on day-to-day basis, then we may miss out certain things. This is what happens. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Another question from Sashi Kiran. Does autonomy of an institute impact quality of education?
What is it? Quality of?
Does autonomy of an institute impact quality of education?
There are two ways. If you use it in a right spirit, autonomy improves quality. If you are using in a wrong spirit, I think autonomy will dilute the quality. So we have both the examples. So universities are autonomous, but why quality is not there? Because you are autonomous and are now using it. But there are some institutions, they are not maintaining quality because they are not autonomous, because there too much of regulations. Because of too much of regulations, we are unable to. So that is where you can see some of the colleges, they are autonomous. After becoming autonomous, their quality is improved, their rankings are improved. At the same time, I know some of the engineering colleges, after becoming autonomous, their quality has come down. That is where I think, I can't straight away give that answer, but ideally speaking, your intentions are good and your practices are good. I think autonomy should enhance the quality, provided you use them in the right spirit. You use the autonomy, right purpose, definitely autonomy will and the quality will be enhanced with autonomy. But our intentions are bad. Say, I can give you an example. If you are not non-autonomous, you are affiliating university. Papers are set by your affiliating university. Then the result percentage is low and the quality is maintained. But once you are becoming autonomous, suddenly there is a 100% internal assessment. Then you are giving all easy questions and easy evaluation, and 90% of your students are getting first classes, distinctions. So do you think the quality is improved? That is the question mark. So as long as our intentions are good and we would like to improve the autonomy for the sake of improving the quality, definitely I can vote for it. Autonomy improves the quality, provided we are able to improve it, use it for proper tasks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. This is from Thomas Excel. And I think we have come to the almost end of this session. We have got another session which will be starting by 11:45. And sir, thank you very much, sir. It was very insightful. And you have got one more session there. You can even give much more information about ranking all the quality parameters. Because there is a one more question on indicators. And you will be talking about NARF indicators and parameters. Thank you
Yeah,
very much,
sure.
sir. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, sir.
Thank you.
So I
Thank you,
request all
Tapra.
the thank you, sir. I request all the participants to close and come back to the another session. Okay, session which is going to start by 11:45. Thank you. Thank you.